there. I'm sorry.
Okay, great. I guess we're getting to that time.
Yeah, so I apologize. I was trying to start setting up everything. So the recording just started. I am now going to be trying to get the Facebook Live up. So you'll see that notification in a minute as well. And at the same time, I see a lot of people coming in. I just want to do a quick reminder of keeping yourselves on mute if you are not on the panel. And so just a quick, housekeeping. And I will let you guys know if anything comes into the chat. It is open for people to ask questions. So as Chap Loveless is going over the questions that have already come in, somebody from the audience might also type into the chat box as well. So if you see it and want to address it, then you can, if it's appropriate. But we're going to follow our wonderful moderator's lead when it comes to that. If there's something specific that I see in the chat that I think maybe he doesn't see, then I will give him a flag or, do one of these or something, but I will try not to be too active because I am also doing the back end stuff and then also at the same time staffing the city council president today. So I got a lot going on my end. So if you need me, yell, but we're good.
Glad you're recording too.
And I just put my phone on mute so that it won't be ringing all doing the town hall on tonight. Sometimes I forget. So we're going to be starting. Looks like now. Are we ready, Danelle?
I am still trying to get the Facebook up. It keeps giving me a hard time. So I'm
just a warning, guys. I think 2 town halls ago, we ended up on, I wasn't on it, but we ended up on CNN, right? Remember that?
Oh yeah, we ended up on the news. Yeah, that's right. I talked to Chap afterwards and he was like, oh, I just saw you on the news. I was like, no, not me.
Yep. I felt bad because I texted her. It was like 1 a.m, but I shot a text anyway as soon as I saw it. Uh-oh, Mr. Casagrande. Welcome, Luke. Pastor Luke in the house.
Whoop, whoop.
Hi, Pastor Luke.
How you doing, Pastor Sharing? It's good to hear your voice.
I'm doing good. It's good to hear yours as well. Everyone, we thank you for your patience. We're trying to get the Facebook Live connection going.
God bless you, Chap. Good to see you, brother. Looking good.
Thank you.
We can go ahead and get started. I am recording. We're not gonna hold for time. I don't see CP here yet though. Let me shoot him a text.
Council President.
Of course, is talking about the council president joining us. He is one of our panelists on tonight. Also, I'm looking for Anthony Presley. Is he here yet?
Yeah, I don't see Mr. Anthony.
All right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Hopefully, Mr. Presley and Council President Mosley will join us in a minute. I certainly want to say welcome to Baltimore Action Catalyst Team for Change for our 6th town hall that we're doing, and we're saying citywide town hall, even though we are located right here in the Park Heights community. But our view is that if all of us come and work together, share ideas, share information, we will be able to move our city forward. And we are a solution-based group. It is collaborative. We're from different organizations just working together at this time. I want to thank all of our panelists for accepting our invitation to be with us. I certainly want to thank all of you that are in the audience. We value one of your participation on today. The information that you give is vital. It is vital. Please know that one of the things that occurred to me earlier today is the fact that you can say one thing or you can give one idea, and that one idea, that one thing you say, that one comment can change the whole trajectory of our city. So we are so very, very grateful for your participation on tonight. Let me do some real quick intros, and then we're going to turn it over into the hands of our moderator. I want to introduce first Janelle Austin Pender, who is a part of BACT. She also works in the office of the City Council President. So we just want to be transparent to let you know that she does work with BACT with permission. She was working with us before she started working with him. And we holding on to her. So she is still working with us with permission. One of our other members is not here right now, and that is the person of Catherine Cooper Nicholas. Here in Baltimore, they are doing a preview of an oral historical event in regards to Park Heights. I was trying to figure out another word, but event for right now that they are having. I was also included in that. I gave my oral interview almost a year or so ago, but history, one thing about history is past, it's gone, there's nothing we can do about it. However, we can take action to change the future. And that's what we're here all about tonight. We want to change the future of our city. We want to change the future of our communities. We want to change the future of our community. And by change, I mean bring improvement, bring progress. All right, I want to say that Karen Taylor, I don't see her here right now, but she is going to be signing on tonight. She may have had problems logging in, but we will have someone that will be using ALS tonight in order to sign, ASL, I'm sorry, in order to sign on tonight. We have David Chap Loveless, who is our moderator on tonight. You all forgive me for doing that. And I am so grateful to him. He has been a tremendous, tremendous help to us. He is one of our advisors, along with Reverend Teresa. She's not here tonight either. That's Reverend Teresa Mercer, who has years and years and years of experience here in Baltimore City, working as chaplain, working in various positions. So we certainly want to give her honor. We want to mention her. on this evening. And now I'm going to tell you just a little teeny bit about Chap, our moderator. There's so much more that can go in here, but I'm going to go with what we have. He is a resident of Baltimore. He is the vice president of Power Fest Baltimore, a chaplain with Baltimore City Police Department, and he was a former rec leader. And one of the things I put in here in my note is that he is a budding actor. And he is also, broadcaster. So he'll tell you a little bit more about that. But one thing I've really come to know, that he is a champion for the people. He's a husband, father. And as I said earlier, he knows everybody in this city. I'm sure of that. I am convinced that he knows everybody in this city, and he is always there to lend a helping hand, and I appreciate him. So at this time, I want to just present to you Chap. We call him Chap. His name is David Loveless. So here he is, and he will take over from this point forward.
Thank you, Pastor Spence, for a great introduction. I'm humbled to be here, and I'm grateful for everyone investing time or sacrificing your time to be here at the Town Hall, hosted by Baltimore Action Catalyst Team for Change. Just real quick, we'll go through the panelists, and as I name you, we'll have 2 minutes to kind of give us a little background before we get into things. And I'll begin myself. Alongside of what Pastor Spence said, I also host a show with my partner, Quita Chansey, called Shared Space on BlackUSA.News. I am a humbled recipient of Black Wall Street Award for Baltimore. We partner with a couple organizations, Baltimore Homes, to serve the homeless community, as well as breadcoin.org, which is a great program that's building up momentum in Baltimore to help people with food access, help them gain food access with dignity. And you can check the site out for more information. Besides that, everybody in Baltimore has my number. If there's a need and we can meet it, that's kind of what I do. And I'm privileged to be here tonight. So we have a couple panelists here that I'm excited to hear from as well. I think we're waiting for Council President Mosby. Is that correct? And I believe Mr. Presley has not joined us yet. However, next on the list, Ms. Kelly Bakala. I hope that I pronounced that right. If you could introduce yourself to us.
Sure, yes. My name is Kelly Bakala. Hello, nice to meet everybody. I work for the Baltimore City Department of Housing and Community Development. I actually see a lot of familiar faces, people that I've worked with in the past, so it's nice to see you. I have worked for the City of Baltimore for 13 years, all within DHCD in various roles. My current role is in Northwest, and I manage different projects that are going on in Park Heights and the surrounding areas on behalf of the City of Baltimore. I also work with the Vacancy Value Program, which sells vacant city-owned property throughout the city. I specialize in Northwest, but there are 5 of us throughout the city, and you're in Christ, so you're going to get this. And that's it. I also work with a lot of community organizations in Park Heights just to teach them how to purchase in Baltimore, what development looks like right now, ongoing projects. Anytime we have large sales, we do community meetings to present presentations to the communities to see their opinion of things. So I'm very involved in the community as it relates to development of city-owned property. So thank you so very much for having me, and I appreciate it. I look forward to this evening.
All right, thank you. Next, we have Sharif Smalls. You would take 2 minutes to introduce yourself.
Yes, good evening, everyone. First, thank you for having me on the panel. As you mentioned, my name is Sharif Smalls. I actually have a tax accounting and financial planning practice called SGS Financial Firm. So we do bookkeeping, payroll, and tax for small businesses and nonprofits. In addition to that, I also have a nonprofit called Financial Pop Movement. What we do is we teach kids in the community financial literacy, entrepreneurship, and real estate. Our purpose and passion is in poverty and equality. And our goal is to do that through community economic development. And then in addition to that, I also have a real estate development company called SGS Investment Properties. So we own commercial buildings and apartment complexes, as well as rehab houses, and sell them to first-time home buyers in the community. So again, excited to be on the panel. Most important is being a part of, seeing some real positive changes within the city of Baltimore.
All right, thank you, Mr. Small. And next on my screen would be Ms. Goodman. If you would take a moment and introduce yourself to the audience. Oh, you're muted, Ms. Goodman. One thing I can tell you, she has a great smile.
Thank you so much. Hi, my name is Marita Goodman. I'm Executive Director at Go Northwest Housing Resource Center. We're located in Northwest Baltimore at 2300 Garrison Boulevard on the corner of Garrison Boulevard and Gwynns Falls Parkway. Go Northwest is a community-based nonprofit organization which provides financial and home ownership, education and counseling and coaching for individuals, predominantly low to moderate income persons, but for anyone who is looking to obtain, maintain, or retain a home in Baltimore City. We've been in operation under that name, Go Northwest, since 2007. But we had our roots in starting back in 1999 as a homeownership project for the Garwin Oaks United Neighbors Association, which is a neighborhood association which I'm now currently the president of. The services that we do provide for home buyer, what I like to say current and potential homeowners, we provide homeownership workshops, monthly workshops, which are virtual, online, individual homeownership education that people can take at their convenience. We provide housing counseling on a daily basis. We, for home buyers, provide them access to various homeownership programs and incentive programs so they can meet their find down payment assistance and closing cost money, and help them to get their financial picture in order so they can not only buy a house, but stay in the house. That's really important. I think sometimes we put a lot of focus on purchasing the house, but my concern is once you get it, can you stay in it? We also provide for those who are challenged on that stay in it piece. We also provide a foreclosure prevention counseling right now virtually on a daily basis. And for those who need a little bit extra help or assistance in preparing to purchase a house, we started our financial, what I call capacity building program called Money Matters. And we started in the schools by providing the program for parents to help them to get their financial house in order and to strengthen up, get some financial fitness back into their financial management skills so that when the times come to buy a house, they'll be successful in it. We also manage a small program called Healthy Neighborhoods. We are now in 5 Northwest neighborhoods, which provides low-cost loan program and incentives to individuals to either purchase and renovate, or for homeowners to improve or make repairs on their home so they can stay in the home, sustain the community, and make it viable for not only current residents, but potential residents. So through all our programs, our main our motivation is to equip and empower individuals to strengthen their financial stability and capacity, purchase and keep their homes, and so that they can strengthen and sustain their neighborhoods. I think that's 2 minutes.
Oh, that's a little longer, but that's really good information. So I hope at some point during our town hall, if you can take time to put your contact information in the chat so that people can reach out to you and get some of those resources. So the reason we're all here tonight, it looks like we have a couple experts on basically the vacants, right? And the program where there's legislation being written for getting homes for $1. I was hoping our guest, Ms. Bakala, could start us off and explain what the program is and what the legislation is that's being proposed.
So unfortunately, I think Mr. Mosby would be much more of a pro on the Dollar House program. I am a little bit knowledgeable of the program.
There he is.
Looks like he's joining.
Look at that.
There he is, right on time.
Everyone.
Welcome, Council President Mosby.
There's a little technical difficulties.
Glad you're here. So if you want to take a couple minutes, introduce yourself, and then if you just want to go right into the program we're discussing tonight and some of the changes that are proposed, but please first introduce yourself to the audience.
Okay, well, first and foremost, thank you so much for hosting me tonight, having me on, allow me to participate in this amazing event, as well as the panel. I'm Council President Nick Mosby. If you don't know the bio, born and raised in Baltimore, product of Baltimore City Public School System. I worked as a councilman for 5 years, and then as a delegate for 4, and now as a council president for a little over a year. My background is in electrical engineering. People always wonder, how did you become an electrical engineer to now a public servant? But it was something that I always wanted to do growing up here in the city of Baltimore. And I absolutely love and appreciate the opportunity, and extremely humbled by the opportunity to serve you as your city council president. I think we have a small presentation. I don't want to take up too much time, but we wanted to talk about kind of some priorities that we have on the council. I think is now the perfect time to cue that up.
Yeah, I think that's fair. We had time for that. Yep. Yes,
all right. So Danelle from our office, Danelle Pinder, who is an amazing participant and member of your organization, happens to also work in our office. We hire amazing people as well. And she's going to help us out with the presentation. So Danelle, do you have it queued up? There it is.
Can you see it? Everybody see it? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Can you put it on full screen?
I will do my best. I just figured out how to get it.
I think it's that little square next to the 34% maybe.
Okay.
Try that. Perfect. And then maximize your window. That's a little better. Okay. So you can go to the next slide. So the one thing that we really want to push when I took over as council president was professionalizing the council in a way that the city's not really used to seeing. You know, we saw the city council as an opportunity for us to like go to the council and maybe fill a pothole, maybe get a property boarded up, kind of constituent services. So ensuring that the council was like the conduit between our issues and our eyes and our ears of what we're seeing and feeling and hearing in our community to the city solving them through city agencies. And constituent services is really, really important on the council, but based off of the charter, it's not the only thing that the council is here to do. The council is supposed to be a legislative body here in the city of Baltimore. It's supposed to be the institution that is proactively going after policies to help change the trajectory of our city, to go after the structural and the systemic issues that have plagued our city for far too long. If you can recall, you know, in the past, the council did a lot of non-binding resolutions, you know, talking to DC or talking to Annapolis, but not really substantively going after and changing policy to, again, move us in a new direction. A lot of times policy really started with the mayor's office, and maybe a council person was selected to kind of champion that on the council, and it was kind of ultimately approved. What we wanted to do was to develop an independent legislative body to really look at the big data, really try to develop policy that was going to go after the core of our issues. And as you notice over the past year, we've really come out with some really strong and substantive legislation that is unconventional, but I think really moves the city in the right direction. One of the first actions was, you know, I served as a delegate in Annapolis, like I said earlier. We had 141 members in the House with 6 working committees. But when I got to the City Hall, we had 15 members and we had about 14 committees. So what we did was slim down the committee structure to 6 committees to ensure that we have appropriate discourse and dialogue but ensuring that we're putting the right things that have synergy to one another, like economic development, community development, transportation in one committee, or education, workforce, and youth issues into another committee, because they all kind of fit together and they all are interrelated. Another thing we did was, in the past, we had 10 to 11, at sometimes 12 community liaisons that would go out, participate in community events, and of the like. Well, we took part of that organization down, and we made some of those individuals legislative aides to, again, get to the substance of what we're here for as the legislative body of the city of Baltimore, and that's actually developing policy. And we've come out, again, with a host of different series. Today, we're going to talk about House Baltimore, which is a package that I'm ecstatic about and I really, really appreciate. Now, you guys understand firsthand, based off of your civic engagement and your public work, the plight of Baltimore City, particularly our communities that have been disproportionately disinvested in for far too long. It didn't start 10 years ago. It didn't start 20 years ago. It really started with this idea in 1911 that the city of Baltimore, the first legislative body in the entire country, created an ordinance that basically told Black people where they could live and Black people where they couldn't live. And in Baltimore City, not in Texas, not in Alabama, not in Mississippi, right here in Baltimore, was the first legislative body in the entire country to pass that ordinance. And it started to spread throughout the South, and eventually it was knocked down by the Supreme Court, but it is the precursor to what we know as redlining. So Baltimore City is literally the poster child for redlining. That's why we see an extremely hyper-segregated city. That's why we see economic apartheid throughout our city. That's why we see from one block to the next issues and concerns where urban renewal decided to develop a line where the have will live and the have-nots will live. Baltimore City is the poster child for those types of conditions. And with that, I think it's our responsibility to literally correct the wrong. We talk about moving our city in a new direction, moving our community and our citizens in a new direction. It's really important for us to talk about it, not just as it relates to policy around social justice and changing laws, but also how do we develop economic paradigm shifts in our community. We can go to the next slide to now. So this is just a picture of the, if you took this picture, which is of all the vacant properties in the city of Baltimore, and you implanted the red line map, you would see a stark reality of how they compare to one another. And that's knowing that policy that was shaping bigotry and racism literally shapes the way our communities look today. And we see the residual effects on a daily basis. And that's where you get the core issues in East and West Baltimore. We can go to the next slide now. So with that and all that data that we had, we really went after and we took action. I'm gonna talk about a couple bills tonight. I'm not gonna get into all the bills, but I'm talking about a couple bills because they sit near and dear to my heart. And I think they're really important for folks to understand and know the information about it. When the House Baltimore package, we wanted to bring back the Dollar House program, basically for legacy residents. Many people say, well, the Dollar House program worked before, but did it really work? The Dollar House program was extremely successful before, but no housing program. And I'll repeat this, and I'll argue with any subject matter expert or scholar about Baltimore City real estate. There's been no Baltimore City sanctioned program that has worked directly to the multitude or to the volume in which we're talking about other programs have worked for Baltimore City residents, for citizens. Now, we've had programs that, developers think are great, out-of-town speculators think are great, folks who are just buying up property as a way to sit and hold on that property, I think is great. But there's never been a pipeline for Baltimore City residents to have access to the disposition of Baltimore City owned and authorized property that the city can sell. And that's really, really important because what we know is where we sit at our city today, we know that 50% of our residents pay 35% or more of their monthly take home out in rent. So that's 35% or more in rent every single month. So in the same communities that we're talking about have been disproportionately disinvested in, folks are paying $1,100, $1,200, $1,300, $1,400 a month in rent when those same properties, brand new built properties that they could own their own, they could be having an amortized 30-year mortgage for $800 or $900 or $1,000. not only saving money on a monthly basis, but also growing generational wealth as it relates to the appreciation of their property, because we understand and know our communities will continue to grow and real estate will continue to grow. So what we wanted to do in this very unique phase of Baltimore City's history is develop a pipeline that was literally dedicated to Baltimore City residents. Folks who, again, are renting in our communities, but providing them a pipeline or access to ownership through the Dollar House program. So the Dollar House bill literally says, it's the Homestead bill. It literally says, we want to take all property that the city is authorized to sell, residential property, and put it in its own registry. And inside that registry, you have to have the eligibility requirements that really matches what a legacy resident looks like in order to purchase the property from the city of Baltimore for just $1. Now, the property that the city holds and the property that the city disposes of on a monthly basis to, again, folks that are out of town, to developers, to nonprofit organizations, these properties aren't the best properties. They're not in the best condition. So someone's not going to come in, purchase a property for $1 and be able to move in the next day. No, the idea is for our working class residents, our teachers, our city workers, our bus drivers, folks that live and work in our community, that are from our community, that love our community, to provide them, again, a pipeline of ownership in our community. It not only does all the stuff that I talked about as it relates to their individual economics and generational wealth creation for them, but it also provides real opportunity for us to save our communities in a way that we have not been doing. If you look at the census over the past 20, 30 years, the loss of population are coming from the same communities that have been disproportionately disinvested in, our Black and brown communities, for a reason. Because if you're not investing in my community and I'm dealing with crime, I'm dealing with blight, I'm dealing with grime on a daily basis, and I'm paying $1,000 or $1,100 or $1,200 a month in rent, I can easily move over to the county, still keep my same public sector working class job, but live in a better environment, in an environment that I can appreciate or that appreciates me. But it's different when you're a homeowner, when you know that you're there, you know that that's your property, and you know that that property is growing value, for you to plant that flag like we desperately need. Because if we do not, the communities that we know that we've loved and grown up and respect are going to come completely different in the next 5, 10, or 15 years. We can look at Washington, D.C., we can look at Brooklyn, New York, we can go all across the country and see how gentrification has really taken a hold to many of the communities. And we're really starting to see that pipeline happen here in the city of Baltimore. Before I go into the two other bills, I will say that, we look at kind of the rundown properties, the vacant properties, as something as an eyesore in the city of Baltimore. And unfortunately, it's become normalized to us as an eyesore. But many folks out of town see it as a huge opportunity. That's why in the third quarter of last year, Baltimore ranked 20th in the entire country as it relates to real estate transactions. And it's going to continue to rank that way, because when you talk about the biggest bang for your buck on the East Coast, you can't stop to a city other than Baltimore City to know that it has the history, the culture, water to our east, mountains to our west. DC's 45-minute train ride. New York, the Big Apple's 3 hours away. It has the institutions. It has the cultures, the arts, the sports. It has everything here that anybody would want. Folks understand and know that the appreciation and value of Baltimore will continue to grow and increase. And as long as we continue to lose population and we continue to sell assets to folks that aren't from the community, that do not have the cultural connectivity of the community, you're going to see surely but slowly Baltimore continue to slip away. So the Dollar House program is intended, again, not for developers, not for speculators, not for nonprofits, not for organizations, but for individuals who want a pipeline to home ownership in the communities that they have grown up to love and respect, while dealing with the crime, grime, and blight, because of a disproportionate amount of investment from our city, our state, and our federal government. Other two programs that I'm going to talk about now that fit inside of this House Baltimore package is another home repair grants. And the home repair grant basically says, not only to the individual who's purchased a property for $1 in these communities that have been disproportionately impacted and have been affected by things like the Redlining, not only do the Dollar House programs have access to this grant, but also the homeowners that live in this property. And why is that so important? When we talk about a middle class, we talk about what is the biggest investment. For most middle class families, it's going to be a house. It's going to be a home. And the unconscionable thought that because government has significantly forgot about certain communities, because government has allowed, whether intentional or unintentional, policies shaped in bigotry with unintended or intended consequences that provide residual impact of what we see today, to affect communities. We know that there are communities in Baltimore City that were built at the same exact time as other communities in Baltimore City or Baltimore County with the same exact architecture, same exact material, same exact planning, same exact builder, same exact time, where the properties in certain areas are worth 5 to 6 to 7 times more than the properties in Black and brown communities. That is a fact. That's a reality. And it's unconscionable that because of the lack of attention and because of the failed or policy shaped in bigotry that has been applied to the Black and brown communities, it's literally stripping away generational wealth. And we understand and know that middle-class folks, when it's time to fix up the roof or put new windows in, a lot of times they have to go into the equity of their property to sustain and maintain their property so that property value can continue to grow. Well, if your property value is not growing, you do not have the ability of doing that. And that's where we see the disproportionate amount of decay in certain communities as opposed to other communities. So with the home repair grants bill, it's literally a grant, it's not a loan, that basically says for individuals who have property, owner-occupied property in the same communities, that $50,000, we upped it from $25,000 to $50,000, would go into any home repair, be it roofs, be it windows, doors, porches, whatever, to take care and continue to build back the communities that, again, we have disproportionately disinvested in. Now, again, that grant is for not only the dollar house purchasers, but also for individuals who live in that community that are owner-occupied residents of that community. And the last bill is a reverse mortgage protection for seniors bill. It's a $5,000 grant to really help and aid seniors who are facing foreclosure as it relates to the very predatory reverse mortgage market. We know that communities of color have been disproportionately marketed to and branded to and sold to of these types of programs. And we see year after year, many of our folks losing property based off of these really predatory type of practices. So with that, that's what I'm going to leave it at as far as the House Baltimore legislative package. I'm definitely interested in taking questions later. What I will say in closing out is this is an unconventional way. The reality is when the boogeyman is out there saying this won't work, these people can't get approved for these loans, these banks won't approve this, this, and this is what we hear over and over again. The reality is, what have we done over the past 40 or 50 years to empower Baltimore City residents as it relates to real estate in the city of Baltimore? And I will argue with anybody, we've done absolutely nothing. So either we're going to continue to double down on the failed practices that we've done for the past 20 and 30 and 40 and 50 years, as long as I've been alive, or we're going to take unconventional steps to provide real opportunity for our residents to have access to Baltimore City growth. The reality is Baltimore City is going to grow, right? It's going to grow. If we're going to blink and in 10 years, Baltimore City is going to be a different city. The reality is, are we going to choose how Baltimore City grows? Are we going to grow our city responsibly by providing the folks who have been dealing with, again, the crime, the grime, and the blight, real opportunities to have access to home ownership? And that is the motivation of what House Baltimore looks like. That is why we're building a council that really goes after legislative priorities in an extremely substantive way to try to move our city in a different direction. And with that, I'll close out the presentation and turn it back over to you, Mr. President.
All right, that is great information. Thank you, Council President Mosby. Thank you so much. I'm sure if you guys reach out after the town hall tonight, we can get you in connection or in contact with some of the information that was given on the presentation. So to begin our discussion, Mr. Mosby, Ms. Bakala, our other guests, I'm sorry. You spoke about the proposed Baltimore legislation for the dollar home. So what are the changes and you know, what's the expectation for like how long it would take to pass the legislation? How is it going to affect people?
So, you know, we're currently going through the city council process. We've had 8 hearings. We want to be very transparent about the process. We did it as community as a whole. So all of the members of the council have been part of the committee. It's kind of at an even time between the folks that are supporting of it, the folks who are against it or still have some heartburn or concerns about it. And what we're trying to do now is just work through the issues that folks have in their individual district to try to figure out how we can get a healthy number of the council members to support it. The one thing I'll say about this is I feel like it's a once in a lifetime opportunity. Because of COVID, Baltimore City and every other municipality around the country was given significant amount of federal dollars to go after and tackle issues like what we're talking about here with housing. It's called ARPA, American Rescue Plan money. Baltimore City was given $641 million to spend in 2 years. Now that sounds like a lot of money, but with a big city with big problems like the city of Baltimore, dissipating that out to every organization, every community, every problem, we look up in 3, 4, 5, 6 years, the money will be gone. But if we decide to centralize the money on developing generational change for 1 or 2 items, that is how we get our biggest bang for our buck. That's how we really see return on investment. And it is my theory and many of my council members' theory that housing sits at the core of many of our issues, from public safety to environmental justice to just the economic apartheid that we see throughout our city as it relates to the lack of or the disproportionate amount of disinvestment for far too long. And so that's what we've been pushing on. That's what the House Baltimore package was literally set up. That's why we restricted the Dollar House program to ensure that we responsibly grow our communities by providing pipelines of ownership opportunities here in the city of Baltimore for the residents that deserve it the most.
So, Ms. Goodman, your camera's off, but between yourself and Ms. Bakala and Mr. Small, do you guys have? I see the wheels turning, and you know, what do you guys want to bring to the table? Any comments?
I'll just add that, you know, the more ways that we can have to sell city-owned property and to remove vacancy is always a benefit to the city. So for sure, especially selling to homeowners, you know, I work a lot in the neighborhoods as a development officer, just trying to make sure that the community is happy with who is coming into the neighborhood and who is, you know, doing the work. And it's always easier if it's someone from the neighborhood. So, you know, I think it's a great idea to try and encourage you know, folks to get involved in their own community. I do think that we as a city should help support, you know, try to support ways to help finance that rehab, because, you know, as the council president mentioned, you know, many of these properties are in dire condition and, you know, do require a lot of funding to do the rehab work. But there are a lot of interesting programs that are also being worked on with different banks that I've spoken with on lending to people for rehab. So like Baltimore Community Lending does a lot of work with that, as well as M&T Bank has a good construction loan program. So we are seeing construction loan programs coming along, but, you know, I'd love to see something like that. And I love seeing the homeownership grants. We do a lot of homeownership grants in Park Heights through PCDA, which I know the council president was also a member of. So I'm all for homeownership grants. It's really been successful in Northwest, and I do believe that was some of the ARPA money is targeted towards some homeownership grants throughout the city. So it's always great to see legislation for more of that.
And Mr. Small, I see you and Ms. Goodman are unmuted. Before you guys speak, I just want to let the audience know we have the chat open. So if you have questions for these guys, please post them in chat and we will present them. Ms. Goodman, if ladies first.
Well, I'm glad that I'm a part of this panel to be able to, for once and for all, hear a full presentation of the programs that is coming out of President Mosby's office. And I would like to say, as coming from, I guess, a housing counseling background, and also, actually, I used to work for the city's Department of Housing years ago. I like the idea of, along with the Dollar House, providing funds for people to fix up the homes, because I've had firsthand knowledge of people, once they have gotten the homes, they might, you know, be able to afford to get the homes, but a lot of our homes, well, Baltimore, you know, was one of the original, you know, colony, you know, Maryland being one of the original colonies. A lot of these properties are old. They're very, over 100 years old. And so, like I said before, it's great to be able to provide opportunities for people to get the house. What I'd like to see is emphasis more, I won't say more emphasis, but the emphasis on helping people to stay in the house, along with these grants that will help them fix up the house. Maybe, you know, and I don't know if you want to make it I hate to use the word condition, or one of the criteria for when the people purchase the dollar houses, that they, you know, maybe sit in, take a home ownership course or a home buying class, because you'd be surprised at what you can learn in it. A real quick story, when I was counseling, I had a lady call me up and she was wondering how she could sell. She had just bought her house. She only had owned the house for about a couple of months and she wanted to sell it. And in talking to her, what she was telling me is that she found all these problems with the house. So I said to her, I said, well, did you get a home inspection? And she was like, no, as if to say, why would I do that? And then I said, well, did you go to a home buying workshop? And she said, no. And I really could hear her, you know, just like 2 minutes off of crying. And I wanted to say, well, if you had gone to a workshop, that's one of the things we tell you, you know, is to get a home, just get a, you know, even HUD requires us to say that. We have to sign a document that, yeah, we said this in the workshop. So I think the idea of making homes very affordable, because that, especially now in this day and age, during this pandemic, housing prices have gone through the roof in Baltimore, which is very unusual. You would think during a time when people may or may not be working or have, you know, reduced income, they would not. That was one of the concerns. We thought people might not be buying houses, but in Baltimore City, we've had some of the highest booms over this last year. If you look at some of the Live Baltimore reports I get from Annie Millie. Yeah, Annie, I just saw her today at an event. And so houses are even more costly now than they were a year ago. And so it's really, I think, important to, especially since you're providing these houses at a very, very, very reasonable price, to maybe have some kind of requirement for people to take at least a workshop, or maybe have a counselor look over their finances, or just to see if everything is in order. You know, because not saying taking anything away from real estate agents or lenders, but counselors are not, like I said in my workshop, we get paid regardless if they buy the house or not. So we're usually seen as an objective of participant in all of this. So that was my comments. Like I said, I was glad to see the increase in the amount of fixing up these houses, because I know the houses in Northwest Baltimore, especially the single detached frame houses, are over 100 years old and they need work. So
David, if I could say a couple of things, and I think Ms. Goodman is actually totally right, and I totally agree. And it's actually built in the legislation. So one inside the legislation is no more like shady mortgages, right? So inside it, you can have a 30-year or under. It must be a fixed prime or below mortgage that you have to become pre-approved for to get access to the homes. Second thing, you have to go through a HUD-approved home buyers class. Every person into the program has to go through that prior to be accepting into the program and getting access to purchasing a dollar house program. And then lastly, we understand and know, as it relates to these repair construction loans, that not only are you going to have an approved licensed contractor, but you also have to have your own independent inspector. And it's that own independent inspector that's working directly hand in hand with the bank, watching your contractor put up the money to do the work and drawing upon the money that you've been able to be approved for, that's going to be part of your mortgage, as it relates to your inspector signing off on that work. And that's completely independent of the inspection that the city will also have to do based off of the permits that there's pulled. So there's a tremendous amount of layers built into the bill, and that is just part of the way of buying a house and working with a lender that provides consumer protection. So many people say, well, I've never built a house, I don't know how to do this. And that's fair, but there's so many different layers of protection to support kind of the issues that Ms. Goodman just went over. So I want to be sure that we understand and know that that is already built in the bill and will become law when the bill is passed.
Thank you. I didn't know that. Thanks.
Mr. Small.
Yeah, I think all that is great information, Councilman President. I think what he just touched on is the requirements of them, buying a house, going through the process. Me on the developer and the investor side, and being a contractor, I think it is very important that they are dealing with, licensed contractor, and the buyer understand the process of the construction process, the occupancy, the, permits and things of that nature. Because it's, to me, I think it's like very similar to, the 203K loan, when you buy a house and the renovations are included in the loan. One of the things that I do know is usually sometimes, well, as far as I know, the buyer usually has to put some money up to, make some repairs, and then usually they get reimbursed, from hear somebody else. That does reimburse. So them understand that they have that money set aside, they don't have to have the money set aside for the whole repair budget. But I know from day one, they have to have some money set aside for some of the repairs, and they get reimbursed, from the lender. And I'm just understanding that process and having a budget as well as the patience for that process as well. So I believe there should be like definitely a list of contractors that are approved. Pretty much I think the bank used to have a list of contractors that are approved, but then you can also find other contractors as well. So I just hope that, they have the guidance with the buyer to make sure they get a reputable contractor to, to do the work.
And so this is all really great information. I think Mr. Sharif is correct, because we want to protect the people we're trying to help, right? One of my questions, as I'm hearing these information, I kind of have a question for you guys, is that vacant to value has been around since I think 2010, and you correct me if I'm wrong. And I still, like was mentioned earlier, there's still houses in West Baltimore that have been boarded up since the race riots or race wars, whatever you want to call it, 68 and 69. So I'm wondering why we haven't seen, I think there's like 15,000 vacants right now in the city. So how will this legislation help address that? Because for 10 years, we're still seeing homes that have been boarded up for over 5 decades.
That's actually a really, really good question, David. So 70-80% of the vacant properties out of 16,000 in the city of Baltimore are privately owned. Okay. They're not owned by the city. And the reason that they're privately owned is what we talked about earlier about developers and speculators. So there's people outside of the city of Baltimore, outside of Maryland, buying property every single day at pennies on the dollar, $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, with no clear plan to fix them up. Sometimes they buy them unseen, just purchase them over the line. And the idea is they know that they can hold on to this property. And the reason that you want to hold on to property, particularly in a place like Northwest, where there's a tremendous amount of culture, history, a tremendous amount of institutions, and just entrenched access. You know that eventually holding property for 5 or 10,000 in the worst block of Park Heights is going to be valuable one day. So what these folks do, they buy and they hold. And the idea of paying $200 or $300 a year in property tax is just a cost of doing business. It's an expense. It's a tax write-off. So they sit and sit and sit and sit and hold on these properties. There was a property 3 or 4 weeks ago where the city of Baltimore lost 3 courageous firefighters for going into a house on West Baltimore Stricker Street. And it was a fire that was set by an individual. They lost their lives for that. That property owner was paying $300 and odd some dollars a year in property taxes. We also know that 5 or 6 years prior, there was another fire at the same residence where other firefighters were injured. So it's not just looking at it from a vacancy to values perspective, because they're the properties that the city has the authority to sell it, but it's also about the individual owners that are just holding on to these private properties. So last week, we introduced a series of additional bills that we didn't talk about tonight, but that's really increasing the fines and the fees associated with just sitting and speculating on property. So for one of the bills, the emergency response bill, it basically puts the bill of the city of us going out, putting our firefighters to put out a fire, to do whatever calls onto that particular residence. It puts that fee back onto the homeowner. So hopefully making it extremely uncomfortable to just sit on property in the city of Baltimore. It also goes after homeowners that have issues with 311. So you have reoccurring 311 concerns. There's going to be an escalated pay schedule associated with the fines that you have to pay for that. And then just really reevaluating the way the whole vacant registry list is looked at and developing a new pay structure. Again, what's the purpose of this? Is to really try to drive some motivation for folks to either fix up, take care of their properties, or sell their properties to the hand of responsible individuals. But I want us to be very clear. The overwhelming majority of property that's vacant throughout our city is through this private market of where people are just selling and buying and holding with this idea of speculating for return on investment in the future.
Thank you for that. Appreciate that. I'm looking at some of the questions we had, and a lot of them have been answered through you guys sharing in your presentation. So how do we get people plugged in? Like, how do we incentivize residents? And especially from my angle, how do we incentivize community groups to get these homes and, maybe turn them into what Sharon Spence introduced me to, this term, communiversities, right? I know Coach G has one over on over in Park Heights for the football team, right? He took a home that he was familiar with and turned it into a community space. Is there room for this, or what kind of incentives do we have for this kind of process?
In the House Baltimore package is specific to home ownership, trying to increase home ownership. Okay. Again, I gave the statistic that 50% of our residents pay 35% or more in their monthly take home out to rent. And we understand and know our communities are going to continue to grow. Let's grow them responsibly by giving folks pipelines to home ownership and really trying to develop an economic paradigm shift in our communities by creating generational wealth. That is literally the mantra and the foundation of what House Baltimore is built off of.
I'd also just add, if folks are looking to purchase in the city of Baltimore, the city offers a lot of programs, including if you're an employee of the city, or many larger employers have Live Near Your Work programs. I know Sinai Hospital has a really wonderful program that offers up to $20,000, I believe, for Live Near Your Work. There's also the Vacancy to Value Booster, which does expire, but it offers $10,000 toward closing cost assistance for properties that used to be vacant and are now rehabbed. We also have facade improvement grants in some areas. So those are just some things that, I try to help the developers and homeowners that I work with know that information so that when they're selling their property, they have that information for the future buyer. But that's just something that, a small part, obviously 5,000, 10,000 isn't too much in the grand scheme, but it adds up, and any bit can help with a homeowner purchasing a new home.
Yeah, if I can add on from a developer perspective, one of the things that I've been doing is, of course, getting financing to, as a developer, buying up properties, rehabbing them, selling them, particularly in the Park Heights area. So from a developer perspective, working with BCL, Baltimore Community Lending, they work with developers, but there's another fund called the Dash Fund that just recently been around within probably the last 2 years. That I'm currently utilizing now, and I'm supposed to be closing on 2 properties with the city next month. These are shells, that we're buying from the city, renovate them, and going to sell them at an affordable, housing rate. So once it is renovated and sold, we connect with Park Heights Renaissance. We'll go west and let them know about the houses that are available, because we want first-time home buyers that are looking to buy within the city. So we go from, buying the, clusters to our goal is we want to buy, we want to buy scatters, right? Because they like here and there. So then we go from the scatters to eventually we want to buy the clusters, buy pretty much the majority of the block, because doing 1 or 2 here and there is not really going to move the needle, just to be honest. It's a start. But the challenging part is you'll have 1 or 2 that is owned by somebody that's from overseas or out of the state and just sitting on it. So I know that the city has that receivership program, which I know Kelly's familiar with. If I know after a while, if they do find someone that's not doing anything, they can really try to push for them to to get rid of. But from an investor and a developer standpoint, I'll be honest with you, I had to start over doing with hard money, which is pretty expensive. But to me, it's not about just making money. It's about making an impact, making a difference. So it's a labor of love at the same time. So I've had to use that in the beginning just to be able to get my, into real estate and doing development, rehabbing, and selling houses. And then you start taking advantage of BCL, the state money, and things of that nature. But also the challenge part, just to be honest with you, is as we are developing these properties, for the community, unfortunately, sometimes there's a safety issue. We've had people come in and rob us. And I'm not saying come and put a gun to my head, but I mean actually go in and rob some of the houses that we are actually, developing. So that makes it a challenge. And there are times or two where I've had one of my subcontract that don't even show up and come back, because of that. So as we are getting to the point where we have them, getting the dollar program, being able to actually get that development, we definitely have to tackle that safety point as the development is going on, that these contractors, these subcontractors feel safe in developing these property. Because just like the police are putting their life on the line, some of these investors and developers will putting their life and money on the line at the same time, as well. It's not going to stop me from doing it, because I know at the end of the day, I'm from Park Heights and from the city. And this is something that I feel like my calling and I really enjoy doing. But we got to make sure that as we are doing this development, that there's a safety measure that we are looking at to make sure these projects are getting done, and trying to get done within a certain period of time too, because time is money. And sometimes that can delay the process as you are redeveloping and things happen. That you have to get material and things of that nature over again. We have a lot of professional, people that are out there just to do bad things. So I just want to, put that out there. And it's not just to shine a negative light that it can't be done, but these are some of the challenges that we have as, developers, in addition to making sure we have enough funding resources to be able to do these type of, do these type of projects. But it can be done. And so it really takes the community to really come to work together to be able to make sure these projects are getting done and being successful, and really trying to move the needle or get rid of these blight, properties in the city.
Thank you for that, Mr. Small. I'd like to give panelists, it's 8 o'clock. We do have some questions in the group chat, but any of the panelists, do you guys have any more comments before we start taking questions?
No, happy to answer questions though.
All right. The first one I see is from Ms. Yolanda Pulley. It says, is there anything for people who can't afford to or can't get mortgages due to credit, criminal status, denials and things like that, don't have jobs, that would be enough to pay for a mortgage, like rent caps and et cetera?
So we intentionally wrote into the program, if you have a voucher, when we know the federal government already allows for vouchers to be applied to a mortgage, we allowed for that to fit inside of the Dollar House program. That's something that's been extremely unsuccessful throughout the entire country, of people taking their vouchers and leveraging it for an amortized mortgage. But that is one of the main premises associated with the program. I had an opportunity of sitting down with the Deputy Secretary of HUD and talking about this particular fact and going over some of the data associated. And that's why we ultimately decided to put into the House Baltimore package.
Thank you for that. Danielle, I think Miss Hannah had a question. If you want to unmute her.
Hi, can you hear me? This is Hannah.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I wanted to ask Council President Mosby, I wanted to ask him the question because he brought up a lot of good points about the intrinsic, infrastructural racism that has been endemic in the Black communities and that's plaguing all this blight. And although I think the program is a good idea, I don't feel that it's a complete thought in that it has not addressed any of those issues. In particular, you talked about Redline. Is there any plans for the council to bring back the Redline that the governor canceled in terms of having adequate transportation that's going to facilitate people wanting to stay in Baltimore, work in Baltimore, and live in Baltimore? In addition, the question also that I have is, how do you address, you're talking about legislating, people have to get a approved mortgage. Well, the banks don't want to lend in West Baltimore. And I know because I have property there, and I know that they do not want to lend because the appraisers will come out and say, you want to get a $150,000 mortgage. Well, we're not going to even give you a $200,000 valuation on the property. So absolutely not. Even though you have over a 700 credit score, you have the down payment, and everything is good to go, your house will not appraise. We can't give you $150,000 to do this house. How do you address those issues in this legislation? Thank you.
Yeah, so I think they were great questions. I want to be very clear. I think that unfortunately we're mixing up two terms that mean two total different things. So redlining was a map and a program that was enacted by a federal government that basically.
Excuse me. I understand it was two different things, but I was just bringing that point up to say that transportation is a big problem.
Okay, I understood, but you started out with the houses. I wanted to make it clear for everybody because I'm not sure if everybody understands. Redlining was a program that, again, Baltimore City is the poster child for, that basically draw a map of our cities and told banks basically where they want to lend at. And if they lended in certain areas, which were Black and brown communities, one, the property was already underwater, and two, they provided mortgages and lending and exorbitant amounts of money. And that's where we see the conditions of our property values and our issues today. The Redline program, which is a transportation program that I've been very vocal about as it relates to the infrastructure bill, not only to our federal delegation, but also our state delegation, is a east and west corridor linkage of mass transit. We understand and know that folks that would like to get access to some of the bustling jobs and the new factory jobs in Eastern Baltimore County coming from West Baltimore, it takes about an hour and a half to get there. We also know that transportation is the number one indicator. This is empirical data, this is real data. The number one indicator for someone's ability to escape poverty, to provide upward mobility as it relates to new jobs, as it relates to educational attainment. I've been a leader, not just on the council, but also in Annapolis, of ensuring that we go after that. Unfortunately, we have a governor, and Governor Larry Hogan, who decided to give the federal government $900 million back, almost $1 billion, which was literally kind of the catalyst to get us the red line that back. It's my theory and it's my hope and it's my desire and it's my push that a new administration in Annapolis will no longer take that approach, that they will not be against the increase of mass transit here in the city of Baltimore. You know, I'll be the first one to tell you, I believe it's our Achilles heel as it relates to community development and economic growth in our city, not having a qualified mass transit line. But I want to be very clear, when I talk about the red line map, that has nothing to do with the red line as it relates to mass transit. Regarding the next question, yeah, I know that is what has been put out on the street, that banks just simply will not lend to folks in West Baltimore, but that couldn't be further from the case. When we were coming up with this legislation, we had the opportunity of sitting down with several different financiers who are really, really interested of developing really strong programs to provide directly for this dollar house program. You know, this is not a program that if you're not working, you're going to be able to go out and get a mortgage. No. But for you, Ms. Hannah, who talked about having a qualified score, you know, being working class, living in the community, this is access for you. The only thing I would say, and I'm not sure if this is what you mentioned, you said you own property in West Baltimore. This is not for a developer. This is not for a person that is trying to fix up a house to rent it out. This program is intended for home ownership, owner-occupied units. So this is not the program that you could go buy a house, you could be in that community and the city's going to give you $50,000 to add towards fixing up it as a rental property. However, if you're owner occupied, you plan on living in the house for 10 years or more, this is the program for you. That's not a loan, but a grant of $50,000 to help you and defer your costs of fixing up the house.
Yes, sir. And I own the home with the intent of living in it. I already have approved plans through the city, everything. I'm renting downtown and the loan fell through because the house wouldn't appraise. So that's why
this will offset whatever your house appraised at. Do you mind telling us specific information? What did the house appraise at?
The house appraised at 170.
The house appraised at 170. And what did you get the pre-approval for?
The pre-approval was for 150.
So your pre-approval was 150, house appraised at 170. With this program, you're gonna have a principal of 120,000. You're gonna be 30,000 under the appraised value for you to fix up that house. So that is the value of what we're talking about here. So if it's in the community in which, we're talking about, that fits inside these communities that have been disproportionately disinvested in, that are historically redline communities, in that example that you just mentioned, if this program was to pass, you would be able to have access to that $50,000 repair grant, and you will fall far below the appraised value, and you would be able to get a mortgage.
So even though I'm not currently living in it and I intend
it's about owner occupied, it's about you saying that this is going to be your primary residence. You say that you're currently renting, correct?
That's correct, until I get
correct. So this is about legacy homeowners in our community. So exactly what I said earlier, that you are the perfect person. I'm not sure what community you live in. I'm not sure what your rent is, but 50% of folks in our communities pay 35% or more in rent of their monthly take home. This is an idea to give folks access to own property and not only save money on a monthly basis, but starts ways of pipelines of creating generational wealth through the appreciation of that property. So you actually provided the perfect example of why this program is so needed in Baltimore City.
Yeah, I was going to say, thank you, Hannah. Those are great questions. We want to move on to some of the other audience. And thank you for addressing those, Mr. Mosby. Also, Ms. Hannah, with regards to the red line transit you were talking about, there's some information in the chat you can refer to help support that initiative. Another question we had, kind of backtracking a little bit, there's some questions on, is there any legislation to hold people accountable or consequences for predatory flippers?
No, that's really challenging, because once a property is bought, I mean, I've been dealing with this literally since we took over, where unfortunately individuals will purchase a property that wasn't permitted right, that didn't have the right, inspections done. They thought they bought a house that was move-in. It didn't even have the use and occupancy tied to it. And that's really a loophole that we're finding, particularly, again, in the same communities that we're talking about, where you have these scrupulous, like, quote unquote, developers that are literally just trying to come in and fix up something and sell it to folks who are inexperienced at buying property, and maybe real estate agents that just either aren't educated enough or just don't have the wherewithal or care to kind of do some of that background information. But it's really tough loopholes to fight. You know, a lot of it is state law, but we've been working with Department of Housing and Community Development to see what we can do as it relates to addendum in contracts, to see what we can do as it relates to individuals that we catch that are doing these things, to ensure what other properties they're renovating and currently trying to sell. But it's definitely a tough fight here in the city of Baltimore. I know of a horrible story in Northwest Baltimore with a pretty large home. The folks, first-time home buyers, thought they had their dream house, was quote unquote renovated, and had major structural issues after they purchased it from the developer. And they're kind of stuck with this mortgage in a house that they literally can't live in. That was kind of one of the first things that started all of this, and us doing some of the work with DHCD here in City Hall.
I could just add, again, just a small assistance for folks who are looking to buy a home. The DHCD has a program called Codemap. It's used by our code enforcement team to track permits, vacant building notices, et cetera, it's incredibly handy. I won't go into my sermon about the wonders of Codemap. I use it every day, but I always recommend folks use it. And one of the things I recommend at housing seminars is to look at Codemap when you're looking at buying a home, especially if it's a home that the person is claiming that it was vacant. For if nothing else, to see if you're eligible for the $10,000 vacancy value booster. But one thing Codemap will tell you is what permits were pulled. It will tell you if the building is still vacant. It will tell you if it has a use and occupancy permit. It gives you so much information for folks who are looking at purchasing homes. So I'll put the link in the chat for how to get to Codemap. It can be cumbersome if you've never used a GIS program before, but we do offer a lot of seminars on how to use Codemap. I believe I've already shared a link to our YouTube page, and we have instructions on how to use Codemap. And there is a pop-up when you go to Codemap with a little instruction video that should be of assistance to you. So I'll put that in the chat, but I always recommend people look at that to make sure that the developer that's telling you the work they did is accurate, because the council president couldn't be more right. We have that problem regularly. And the good thing is, one thing that I've really been happy with is we have some good developers working in Park Heights now. Sharif is one of them. But they actually alert me when they see people doing work without permits, because they don't want their reputation hurt either. So, you know, if you see something, say something. If you see a property being worked on and you see in Codemap there's no permit pulled, let us know. You know, it's a big city, it's hard to track everything, but, you know, if we have help with that, you know, we're happy to send someone out, you know, flag it for doing work without a permit. But Codemap can really be a fantastic asset. And I definitely recommend, if you're in development in Baltimore, to use that map as a great tool. So that's all.
Yeah, if we can add on top of that, thanks for saying that, Kelly. When you're dealing with a developer or a contractor, usually if you're buying a house from them, there should be a warranty, at least a 1-year warranty. And if it's structural damage, usually it's one of being longer than that. That's like by state law. There are warranties as opposed to come with your new home, because there's some minor thing that may happen, but if it's something major, that's a whole different ball game. So you want to make sure you're dealing with a contractor or a developer that's in the contract that there's a 1-year warranty or longer. It depends on the structure of the house. If they don't have that contract, I just don't recommend you deal with that and contractor or developer. And if that does happen, you can actually report them to the MHIC commission and also to the developer, to the Home Builders Association as well. So make sure that you get their license, and just make sure that they're bonded. License is the one thing, but they also need, we're licensed and we're bonded, and make sure that we're covered just on both ends. And we also make sure we're going to provide, a warranty, because, things do happen, but it should be minor stuff. It shouldn't be, major stuff. And there should be a warranty that comes with it to make sure that anything that happens, that things are, taken care of.
You're muted, Chap.
Thank you. I want to say thanks for that, Mr. Sharif. And Mr. Mosby kind of began to share a story about a family struggling. And so it leads into this question that I wanted to share, because my brother lives on North Carrollton and Winchester, and he is surrounded by about 6 abandonments. And so one of the questions preparing for this town hall was, what kind of support is in place to assist families who want to stay, but cannot live amongst all the abandoned properties and crime in those neighborhoods?
Well, unfortunately, the neighborhood conditions, are the neighborhood conditions. So if you want to stay in the neighborhood and you move to another house, there's still the neighborhood. You still have to deal with those conditions. I think, as we continue to try to hold our elected officials accountable, we try to develop policies to help, spruce up communities. One thing that we cannot do is continue to lose population. Baltimore City is a city that's built for 1 million folks. In the 1950s, we were 4th or 5th in population. Now we're under 600,000. So we still have the infrastructure, we still have the blocks. And, whether it's a block that's occupied 10% of the houses or 90% of the houses, at the end of the day, as relates to public safety, as relates to all the issues that go to maintain a block, as far as like trash collection, everything, those city services still have to remain the same and be kept up. even though we have, limited populations on those particular blocks. So I think the first thing that we have to really do is the folks that have been living through the crime, the grime, and the blight, as I stated earlier, develop ways to incentivize them to understand and know to stay in their house and understand and know that the city of Baltimore is committed to their communities, unlike what we've done in the past by disproportionately and in a very inequitable way investing in other communities. So if your brother is a homeowner, the fact that he's going to have access to $50,000 to fix up his backyard or fix up his roof or fix up his windows is going to show the city's commitment. The fact that hopefully he's going to be able to get new neighbors as it relates to any city-owned property on that particular block is a way that we're showing effort. The fact that we're going to aggressively continue to go after, based off the legislation I talked about earlier, that was introduced last week, to go after the speculators and developers that are just sitting on some of those vacants. Hopefully that is a step in the right direction. Look, none of this stuff is a silver bullet, but what we have to do is incrementally develop ways to develop the variables of the equation to help revamp our communities, again, in a very responsible way. I don't say this as a person that didn't experience this. When I was 24, 25, graduate of Tuskegee University, moved back to Baltimore, me and my wife, we purchased an abandoned shell. It was abandoned for almost 20 years, didn't have a roof. We could stand on the floor. We could see the stars. Our next door was a vacant. Across the street were 4 vacants. At the corner of my block, 2 houses down, was a vacant that was bombed out in a fire. So I understand and know the conditions of living and trying to work and transform a community. But that's why I think it's so important for the city to show, for once in its lifetime, the ability of providing real incentives to the folks that have been living with the harshest and worst conditions because of the lack of investment and because of the failed policy of the past that I talked about earlier.
I appreciate that response, but I think also in your response, there's also room for directing it back towards the CDCs, right? I'll tell you my personal experience is that people experiencing that living condition, I spend weekends at their house helping them clean up, right? We clean up needles, we clean up trash bottles, whatever, So I think I appreciate your enthusiasm and as an elected official jumping in, but that's not 100% your problem, right? Like if you live in the community, then if I live in a community that's, experiencing this, then that's my problem. Like I can't, expect you to do everything. I need to turn to the CDCs and my neighbors and say, what are we going to do about this? And I don't know if you guys want, any of our panelists want to comment on that, but I think that's huge. And it's entirely appropriate to give the ball back to the community in that as part of that response.
Can I add on top of that? If there's a woman about to speak, she can go on to speak.
Okay. No, I tried to think of some things and ahead of time, and what I had written down when the person wrote what kind of support is in place. I just said, piggybacking or segueing into what Mr. Chap is talking about, I would say learning to, stretching out really to work with community residents and your community associations to develop a plan on how to address an issue. Like for instance, the Go Northwest Housing Resource Center, it just didn't come out of thin air. We didn't have any, I didn't even know what a foundation was, So, and the reason why it came about is because I was a part of my community association. My mother, who's going on and live with the Lord, but she, when I came up with college, she said, you go into the community association. I'm like, okay. So I went to the meeting. She got me on the board. I think I was the youngest person on the board and I was 40. So, and basically because of my experience of working with the city's Department of Housing, I knew of certain things in place. So like Chap was saying, sometimes you can't depend on other people. You have to do your research. First of all, you have to figure out what you want to do. What's the issue? What's the problem? Okay, then determine if there are other people like-minded. One of the things I've learned with the city, at least when I was working there, even though, our city representatives do respond to individuals, they really respond like when about 10 or 20 of them start calling them and, having them come out to meetings and that kind of thing. So we got together it just so happened I had some friends at the Department of Housing. They told me about the CDBG program. I had never written a grant before. He gave me some pointers. I was like, okay. I sat down and wrote it, and I was already ready to, be turned down. And who knew we won? I was like, oh my God! So stranger things have happened, and and here we are today. With a pretty substantial budget and employees working for us. So I would say that, and I'm sure not, and this has happened over in other places. So, working with your residents, your community associations, developing a plan, figuring out the resources, contacting your city planner, community development organizations. Gentleman mentioned CDCs, CDIs, what's it called, CDFCs. I'm messing up the initials, but community development organizations in your area and around the city. I just started having interviews with people getting information about things. And, Google, wonderful thing I learned a couple of years ago. I'm not technology savvy, but just Google stuff, just type in, how do I do this? And you'd be surprised at the stuff that pops up. Google to get ideas on what other groups have done. One of the things that Tim Armbruster, who he's retired now, he used to be the president of the Goldsecker Foundation. He said, the nonprofit world is the one place where plagiarism is applauded. There's no problem, you could, so just if you see somebody else doing it, just adopt that idea, change a few words, hey, it's yours, and go forth and do it. Seek funding based on your goals, investigate foundations and funding sources who support your vision. You have to be real specific because not every foundation or government organization you might have the best or idea since sliced bread. But if you're talking about herding cats and they're funding herding dogs, they're not giving you the money. You can write it as nice as you want. if their goal is, So those are just some things that I wrote down in terms of supporting in place. And one thing I have said, and because I know time's getting short, this might be it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. This might take a few minutes, It's might take a few minutes. And you have to be in it for the long haul, but you'd be surprised, especially in Baltimore City, because we're known for our community associations. Whenever you go to meetings, I call it homecoming. You see so many people because everybody goes to the same meetings because they're looking for the same funding. And you begin, and people will work with you. That's one of the things I found. I tell anybody, I did not get here by myself. I was definitely blessed. The Lord blessed me and put people in my pathway. You can't be shy in this. I used to tell somebody I was an introvert, believe it or not, before this started.
That's right. Life is a team sport. We have one more question we'd like to get, and then Miss Spence, if you can close us out. Mr. Renee, I don't want to mess the name up, but Danelle, if you want to unmute and let them ask their question.
Hi, this is Renee Royster. I posted the question regarding the predatory flippers. We've been going through this, and there's a growing community of victims of predatory flippers. And there are some flippers who actually target our area in Garwin Oaks, and they're within blocks continuing to flip without permits. And it's the same person doing it. They have a signature when they're doing it. And they also have a partner operating the exact same way in East Baltimore. I understand about, calling it in and MHIC and all of that good stuff. MHIC unequivocally told us as homeowners, there is nothing they can do for us. So if the city is aware of this, why is there no fund for us to stay in the city and pay the taxes on this home that we have and we are now saddled with? I am in Garwin Oaks in a historic home paying almost $500,000 for this home that was not permitted and has severe structural damage. Why are there no funds for a city known problem? We are told to call this person, call that one, let this one know. We've let everyone know up to Annapolis. And Annapolis brings the finger and the arrow back down to the city. We complain about people leaving the city, but at this rate, I can't afford to pay the mortgage, pay the taxes. I haven't been in my home a year, and I've dumped over $50K into fixing my home that I was told was completely renovated, and it's still not done. What is out there to help us, to motivate us to stay here and bring these communities back while we're hoping that our homes don't fall down around us?
Thank you, Ms. Royster. We're short, so let's let our panelists answer that question for you.
I'll try to go real quick. This is a problem that I brought up earlier that we're seeing, particularly in the Northwest. Unfortunately, like many of these folks that are doing these flips, you know, they'll set up individual LLCs or corporations to kind of do it in a way of like hiding and continuing to move on while they sell. I think one of the big issues is when we see the deterioration of our community, it's just one, the lack of like enforcement and the lack of oversight from our inspectors. If you remember earlier, that's why I talked about, we've been working with DHCD to try to develop different ways and different addendums, and whether it's state legislation or legislation we can pass on the council to try to get ahead to hold people accountable for the property in which they're selling and conditions in which they're communicating and selling on. Many people will buy a house in the city of Baltimore and not even know it doesn't have a use and occupancy permit because they haven't gone through the right permitting process. I think there's a lot of things. I think when we talk about the Realtors Association, they need to be coming on board to ensure that their realtors are equipped and asking the right question and not just trying to sell a house to an individual. When we talk about getting more education out, like Ms. Goodman talked about earlier, first-time home buying seminars and programs, so people understand and know the process of the things that should have taken place as it relates to if a house was renovated, the permitting process, ensuring that the inspector that you utilize that didn't catch the structural deficiencies and effects, that somehow we develop a registry of holding those folks accountable. So it's not an easy fix, you know, because the sale of property is a individual thing. Like, you know, Kelly might want to buy my house knowing that they had structural issues. She just wants to buy the house. You know, it's really hard for government to step in the way of kind of that private sale. But I think that there are the type of education and engagement and red flags that we can throw up for folks to help properly prepare them to know the type of homes that they're getting into and buying to. Ms. Renee, I feel so sorry for you. Like I said, we've dealt with a couple of these issues already in my office, and we're continuing to work with folks. The one thing that quickly came to me is maybe there's a tax subsidy to lessen the tax burden on you, knowing that if there was an issue associated with the sale and there are major problems and there was no use occupancy and the city didn't maybe do what they needed to do from a permitting perspective, that could be some way of alleviating it. The last thing I'll say is I did go to our law department for the houses and the individuals that I'm talking about that I've interfaced with. And they told me there was absolutely nothing that the city could do to kind of support or help the individuals through it. That was more of a civil issue between them and the person that actually sold them the home. So if there are any suggestions or ideas out there, any best practices that we know are around the country that we could kind of bring to Baltimore, definitely all open ears. But I truly, truly feel sorry for you. And I know that this is an issue that has been going around in the Northwest.
Yeah, I mean, if I can real quick add on top, that was great stuff, Council President. Usually you should be able to pull the permits, call the permits office and report them. Because usually there should be permits around on that building. If it's not, if you don't see permits around on that building, there should be. Usually you can call and then they can have an inspector to come out. Hopefully it's a good inspector and see, and usually they can shut that down if permits are not being pulled. So if you're seeing permits not being pulled, you can actually go up there and ask about the permits and they're not able to show that to you. The permit office is right on the website where you can call them. And I'm also part of the Smart Development Collective, where we're developers, where we're really trying to make sure we weed out those flippers and make sure we have developers that really have a heart for the city, that really want to be about change and make sure that we are building the houses the right way. I'm going to put my information in the chat. If you can, reach out to me, because I do, development in the Northwest and the Park Heights area. If I could be a help and assistance, just give me a call and I can see what I can do to help out.
Appreciate it. Thank you, guys.
I appreciate, your responses, but I do want to make it very clear. I went to the first time home buyers program twice. No one ever mentioned anything about checking permits. And when I called back to the second one I went to, because this is my second home, because I didn't have this problem the first time, I was told by the people at the program that they don't want to broach the situation with permits with their clients because it would overwhelm them and they have to walk a fine line with the city because they're getting funding from the city. Also, the city did come out and confirm that the house never should have been sold, that they never passed it. However, it still was sold. My question again is, we have money for everything else. Why can't a fund be set up somewhere regarding this matter?
Yeah, there is no fund because, so first of all, when we talk about real estate transactions, all of that is state legislation. There's no legislation that the city, that's state chartered like legislation that takes place. When we talk about this, we get into a slippery slope because, like I said earlier, Kelly might want to buy my house that has structural issues, that is really, really damaged, and she's okay with that. Like, she's okay with signing off with buying it as is, which like some of these contracts really are. And I think that's where we get into the slippery slope of the problem. I definitely understand your concern. What I'm saying is not that the city shouldn't do more, because the city should be more proactive. Because what folks will do is they'll get a property, they'll pull like one small permit, and they'll just sit on that small permit while they're doing all this work on the inside of the house and quote unquote fixing the house up, not getting the electrical, the plumbing, the structural stuff all looked into. They just have like this small open permit, and then they go and sell a property. And then when a person comes behind it to buy the property, they're like, you don't even have a use and occupancy to do it. And we didn't know that this work was done. And that's where we start this whole snowball effect. So like I mentioned earlier, it's about education. It's about ensuring that the city does more from a proactive perspective. And then it's also about calling out these inspectors that are just like signing off on this work and not really doing the due diligence to provide, to provide the consumer protection, which they're really there to do in the first place. But I hear you. I hear your concerns. I brought your concern up even before I even knew your particular story, Ms. Renee. If you can contact my office, anything that we can do to kind of continue to help and advocate for you, I'll be here to kind of support you in that regard as well.
All right. I would like to say thank you to all our panelists. Thank you for the audience again for your investment or sacrifice of time. Great information tonight, great questions, and hopefully some more relationships and conversations will perpetuate from this. Pastor Spence, we are past 8:30 if you'd like to close us out.
Yes, I will. I'll go ahead and close everyone out. There's so many things that can be said about the information that was received on tonight. And I hope even with Miss Renee Roster's story, that even if we can't do anything specific for her, but lift that situation up, because there are some answers and we just have to lift the situation up to be fixed. But I hope that we'll be able to pass along her experience to help somebody else out and to make some changes. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you, Janelle, for doing all the technical work for us on tonight. Chap, I thank you. I appreciate your being our moderator. I thank everyone that came and joined us on tonight, whether you're here on Zoom with us, whether you're on Facebook with us. We do appreciate you. We look forward to our next town hall, and we may have to come back again to discuss some other issues regarding housing here in our city, and being able to come up with some solutions, with some real solutions to address some of these issues. Again, thank you. We want to say good night to each and every one of you.
Training.
In
training.
Oh,
Don't forget the training.
Yes. I won't, I actually have it pulled up on my phone so I would not forget. But I want to say that if you need information, the links and all, they will be posted. If you go to the Facebook page, BACT for a Change, you will see all the links that were given out tonight. You will see them in the chat. So make sure to go there. We also will have this on YouTube and you'll be able to view there as well. We want you to know that we have some very important training coming up. Just like our town hall meetings, it is free. It is 5-week training. All of the Saturdays in the month of April, it will be from 10 till 2. It is on Saturday, April the 2nd, 9th, 16th, 23rd, and the 30th. We have some dynamic facilitators that are going to be coming from both Delaware and Philadelphia to provide instruction for you. They have 25 to 30 years of experience together. They're going to be dealing with community development, faith-based initiative, effective activism, home ownership and generational wealth, economic empowerment, and much, much more. If you go again to BACT, B-A-C-T, for Change on Facebook, you will be able to get the link, click on it, register. You'll receive the link for the training and you'll be able to sign up and learn how to avoid some of these pitfalls and learn some of the opportunities that are available here for you in our city in regards to community and development. Again, thank you so very, very much. We appreciate your being with us.
Thanks, Ms. Spence.
All right, everybody.
Hey, good night. Thank you.
God bless you all. Good
night, everybody. Thank you so much.
President. Thank you, Ms. Bakala. Thank you so much, Ms. Goodman. Thank you so much, Brother Smalls. And thank you to my brother, Chap Loveless, and everybody that's involved with planning this event and all of the other events. Making sure that our communities know, are knowledgeable and know how to move forward, move our city forward together. Amen.
Amen. Good night, everyone.
Beautiful.
We are so very grateful. The last time, hi, Rochelle. The last time we had continued to talk, forgetting that we were on Facebook Live.
Oh, I got to take the Facebook Live.
I was trying to make sure we were off of Facebook Live.
We off of Facebook Live.
Okay, now we're off live.
I have to get going, but thank you so much,
Ms. here tonight.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Spence. Thank you, Danielle.
Marita.
See you later, Kelly.
Marita, I'm sending you an MOU tomorrow. I just got it like an hour ago, so I'm sending it to you tomorrow.
Looking forward to it.
Right.
Thanks a
And
lot.
Sharif, I will be in touch with you. Our summer camp coming up. I need you to come talk to our kids and stuff.
Hey, anytime.
Getting 30, getting to know a whole new cohort of 30 this summer. So
I will be there.
All right.
All right. Wonderful. Love you, Chap.
Right.
We'll talk.
Love you too. Thank you, guys.
Take care now. Good night, everyone. Thank you again.
Good night.
Good night.
I'm trying to, wait a minute, y'all. I'm trying to do, y'all go ahead. I'm going to finish up on myself.